could you guys just set the stage for season 2 for this season? Like, what is Wolverine season 2 about?
I can start since I'll be the one traveling with him. It's basically this. It's not like season 1 where we're following this mysterious path of Logan and Burns, and he's trying to, find out what's going on with himself and, the other things like that nature. What you have is two odd pair of, the number 1 and 0 trying to come together to make the number 10 happen. And, that's basically what it really is. Little black kid from Nolans and white mutant from who knows when, where, and how. And we're trying to find Maureen and a few others.
Yeah, I was going to say that the first season is all about finding Logan and who is Logan, what is he? We're always in the wake of Logan, and season 2 is cool because the lens shifts and now it's this unbelievable journey. And I feel like every character has their own journey and their own tension and push and pull and what is reality, and asking themselves all these questions while front-footing everything because it's survival. So that's why, I love season 1, and season 2 is pretty cool because it puts the listener in a different place. Like where you're left in season 1 is fantastic, and you're kind of surprised as to where you start off in season 2.
So can we get a bigger sense of who Logan is? Because in the first season he was more like myth than man, really. And so how does that kind of play out in season 2?
Yeah, he's season 1 he's being searched for. Season 2 he's kind of searching for himself, among other people. But yeah, it's a lot more sort of self-discovery.
Let's say revealing. A lot more revealing for Logan. You get to see a different side of him as well.
You see a lot of wheels turning.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's also a case presented for mutant identity by Jason Wingard, and so that's my view on it. It's making the case for the superiority of the mutant strain.
Do you mind enlightening us towards like how much this season will focus on the mutant world? Because in season 1, maybe mutants were a thing. Here we're really diving into the world of the mutants. Is that true or not? Like, can you enlighten us onto the context of mutants in this story?
There are mutants.
There's more mutants.
There are mutants and
wannabes.
And wannabes.
Yeah.
And wannabes.
Yeah.
And wannabes.
Yeah. I feel like it keys in a lot more to the, how one of the beautiful things that Marvel and Stan Lee did early on was, use superheroes to create a metaphor for like how fucked up the world is with
that's what it
like
was.
between different groups of people and the minority experience, and this one keys a lot more into, because the mutants are a much more present group of people. It sort of delves into
culture,
shittily current in that regard, so there's a lot of parallels there that it's kind of dig into.
The concept of the outsider.
Yeah.
And what does it mean to be on the outside? And what does it mean to feel safe or find safety when the rules keep changing?
Yeah. What does it mean to find a community in both a constructive way and in a destructive way?
I also love the, I don't know if you guys have spent any time in Alaska. I spent a summer there once, a few months, and it's outstanding.
Yeah.
It's like nothing you've ever thought of, imagined. And I love the vast landscape that was built in the first season, that having gone there. And the second season I love because it's a different kind of travel.
We're in NOLA,
All by you.
All the bayou.
And the events that happen in New Orleans in season, or actually leading up to season 1, is it safe to say that those are explored more fully in season 2, and we get to understand who Maureen is and what all happened?
You definitely get a jump start into things that have happened. I love non-linear storytelling. That's kind of how I always keyed into comics as a kid, stealing them from my older brother, basically. My family's from Jamaica, so my parents grew up in the 50s listening to radio and and Foley and sound effects and all that. So what I love about season 2 is how that even bursts even more wide open now that we have mutants, because there's a whole different level of consciousness within the mutant population. And as always, what happens when two things vying for power meet. You know, what language is born from that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does season 2 feel more or sound more traditionally like an X-Men comic, or yes or no for voters?
For me, I didn't read much X-Men comics, but being a fan of the Wolverine story growing up, I get that sense that this could have been a story that I possibly didn't see, or that, you know, that is a story.
That's a good point.
I felt that there was definitely remnants of comic, you know,
Yeah,
Wolverine.
Like an
you
homage.
definitely with the
An homage.
characters in an
Right.
immediate
Thank you.
forward-moving sense.
I think any lover's gonna key into lots of parts of the season. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know anyone who can experience season 2 and not be hooked in some way.
Yeah.
Whether it's I need to learn more moving forward, or all right, we're picking up what we already knew.
Yeah, I remember
You
that
know?
exactly. I remember this story. This is exactly where I left off.
If I may be the super fanboy in the room, just Gambit, question mark, Gambit, do we get to hear Remy LeBeau with cards and dudes' faces? Like, do we get to
What's the Foley word?
Tim, can I answer?
Stay tuned for what's in the season.
Okay.
Good save.
Gambit kills everybody.
Scene.
Can we get a sample of the accent?
No.
The reason why I asked that question too was just because, like, in season 1, it was like such a grounded world where it kind of felt like Marvel's True Detective, where it's just like maybe there's some supernatural force here, maybe there's not. With season 2 entering NOLA and we're getting more mutants, I was curious to know just like how much more of a comic book will this season sound like compared to season 1. That's what I was also getting into.
I think it's safe to say it'll feel a little bit more like a comic book. Yeah, in the traditional sense.
In the traditional sense, yeah.
In regards to characters you played, how do you strike the balance between the research, whether you're looking at the comic books or the movies or TVs, and wanting to really give it your own identity? Like, how do you approach that? Because especially with a property like this, you have so much, in some characters, a lot of backstory.
Yeah, well, Daniel has hooked me up with a bunch of sort of source material. I don't know about you guys, but one of the things I remember liking as reading comics earlier and then sort of diving back into it now is that kind of a wonderful aspect of having that wide-reaching modern mythology with a bunch of different storytellers is that these characters, while they certainly have some constant threads that run from one storyteller to the next, they have slightly different iterations and different shades and colors that can carry them through whatever that particular story needs them to be. And so that flexibility, I feel like, is allows for a more expansive range of storytelling, and it also allows us to say, well, what do we need for this story? What's going to carry us through in a way that serves what we're trying to show about who these people are. And that's one thing I really appreciate about Marvel is like we don't we're not saying Gambit and Wolverine when we're talking in the room. We're saying Logan and Remy, and Jason.
Right.
Like we're like human first, and I think that strengthens the fun and the magic of the supernatural, or the comic book extra push there. But I lost my train of thought.
I mean, I can piggyback off of that. I mean, in terms of
we're exploring what we need for this, but it'll even in terms of the accent, even the accent for Remy, like some in the comics, it's like there's a lot of Cajun going on just in the text and the writing you see, and some they don't really touch it at all. So we're sort of creating our own world and imagining what's going to be make sense for people to hear, what's going to not take us out of it, what's going to allow us to dive in without getting too technical.
What I love about comics is that everyone belongs, and that's kind of it as an artist. When I grow marine, and I'm able to listen to something, that's the beauty of having it be audio, because we're so always keyed into the visual and what things have to look like, and we lock into a picture of phenotype and height and all these things, and it kind of busts it wide open again. And for me, I can just close my eyes and see it and fill up the space, and you can't be wrong because everyone belongs. That's the cool part of comics. Like, everyone dive in.
Do you think that inclusivity is like part of the reason why this property has existed for like 50 years and will continue, into the foreseeable future?
I like to think so. When I think of comics being kind of passed down generation to generation, I mean, that's how a lot of us got them. We're like old copies or finding them in the attic, or I mean, it's like a treasure chest of just like humanity and truths being passed by, kind of a kaleidoscope of different stories. And I like to think that because I need to think that includes. I need to hope that will stand the test of time.
That's right.
So yeah.
That's right.
My research is to have grown up in the 50s, and so those original Stan Lee drawings in the post-war period, and we didn't know whether nuclear testing was going to make mutants of us all, and that hyper fabled 1950s hyperconformity geekiness. It was an avenue for geekiness and being different.
Nerds rule.
Always.
By now.
Always.
We all know that.
We
by now.
run the
Nerds
world.
rule. And, we don't, and the thing I love about comics too is that you can't tell what's in someone just by looking at them.
No.
We come in all forms. We look right.
Yeah.
Like that's what I love about the comics. You meet and everyone looks different who's into it, and it's great.
They used to cost 10 cents. Right on the magazine, you know.
That. Were they not like around like 20, 25 cents now?
No.
Inflation.
What sort of storytelling opportunities are unique in setting the story in NOLA? Because that's such a historical city. It's a city with so much identity and history to it. Just like what sort of what can we expect when we listen to NOLA? Like also listening to the city is a different thing than seeing pictures of it and images of it. Can you enlighten us to what?
I don't know if you guys have anything to say about why you selected that. I mean, but to me, just the opportunity for soundscape is fantastic. You know, just from
beautiful.
between the French Quarter and the swamp, like
Hauntingly
just
beautiful.
like a shitload of options there. You know,
French Quarter alone
Magic,
is-
old magic, different kinds of just stories. The stories buried in the earth that come out. There's a mysticism there.
There
that is
is.
just terrifying, and you're wrapped by it at the same time.
So the first season kind of went along lines of a crime drama, like kind of like Fargo in the winter and the cold. Now in NOLA, you kind of have the structure for a more Southern Gothic crime drama. So would you describe it as that? Does it like play into those kind of tropes?
Southern Gothic crime trauma.
Yes,
That sounds about right.
but within the now much more mutant
It's exalted, yeah.
community, yeah. My character never is in New Orleans, the city. Only in, and our wonderful, the folks who really guide us. Brendan Baker kept saying to me, Bill, I hear you saying Bayou, and I'm sure that's the way you grew up saying Bayou, but we need Bayou. Just for the standard listener, yeah.
The listener. That was gonna be my answer. Is that I just pray I don't offend any Nolan's little boy.
Impossible.
Accent.
You're repping.
I pray because that was the biggest thing for Marcus. It was in the audition. It was can you do a Southern accent? And that's all. I hope that my character can relate to the little boys down in New Orleans or wherever, you know what I'm saying? And I just pray that my accent pushes through. It pushes through and they're able to understand it. That's for me, the capturing the nuances of NOLA, and for me it was the accents, Because they do it, like you said, they do a great job with capturing the different sounds and feeling like you're in New Orleans,
How different is performing in a production like this? Like even in animation, there's still a visual element here. Here, it's completely audio. It's really stripped down to just the voice and how you portray that. Can you just enlighten us into like how this is different from screen acting or animation acting?
This particular voice setting is different from me, and I'm a voiceover artist, and I've never done reading where we're blocking and doing stage blocking, and it feels like I'm doing theater all over again for this particular setting. So it may not be for other voice, but for this, what's going on in that room, it's
because of the nature of this technology, which I'm brand new to.
Brand new.
So as Rachel says, it's gone from Stan Lee telling pictures or telling stories with pictures that got lithographed and then sent out to teenagers, and it's gone from a really visual, like frame at a time storytelling to now it's all voice.
It's all
So
to
cool.
try to evoke that
Yeah.
frame by frame feeling.
It's less cerebral because when I'm in a voiceover booth, it's very isolating. You're
Yeah.
by yourself. There's a
Yeah.
pane of glass. There's a mic room here. This time, you just get to go into a room and play, and you can kind of forget yourself in a way that I love as a stage actor, and a way that you can't get on television because you have a crew of at least 50 people staring at you. So there's never a moment where I'm alone. But here it's kind of you play, and then you kind of trust what's been captured by the audio, and it's amazing the different sounds you can make. Like I love spatial awareness, kinesthetic response. I love finding new relationships to objects, and all these discoveries are being made just in building the work.
And you guys know the sort of setup, right? That's technically how it's being captured.
We actually don't know much about it, yeah.
No.
We can talk about that, right?
Yeah.
My understanding is
Yeah.
the microphone technologies thus far has only been used for like VR recording, to capture sort of location and orientation. And so we have individual mics, and then there's a 3D mic. Is that what it is?
That's what it's
And it sort of acts like a camera because it captures directionality. And we're all in the room together. Any more these days, usually you're recording your part by yourself in a booth.
Yeah.
And we're all in the same room. They're setting up a table. We have props, and so it's this like really new technology that's also harkening back to like original Foley scripted series, from the days of radio, where you can hear you can hear the room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I'm getting thrown up against a wall, and I don't know if we can even say that.
He doesn't
Like I'm
get
throwing
live
myself
against
against the
the
wall,
wall.
recording studio,
Didn't
maybe.
happen.
I'm sipping a drink. We're shaking hands.
It's very
we're-
organic.
No, it's
So
very
You
sort
can
of
hear us breathe.
walk along, so
It's real. It's not sanitized.
It's part of how you get
And it's-
the depth of the sound that
It's
they
the,
managed in
it's
season
like he
one.
said, it just captures you in it's the
Yeah.
breathing from the different areas.
Yeah.
Like he's got to be across the street, or
Right,
he's
right.
got to be in another room, and that's what I feel.
And you ask how the acting's different. Well, it's actually like a lot more simple because you're in the room with your
Yeah,
people. You
it's
get to work
easier.
off of
Yeah.
your scene partner, which is
Yeah.
which means it's much more just in the nitty gritty. You don't have to fake it.
That's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
like take 3 or 4, you can really get off the iPad screen and look the guy in the eye. Yeah, and there's
Gosh.
go ahead and let that sit because they'll fill it with Foley sound.
Yeah.
To follow up on that, then, did any of you ever find a time either this season or previous season that you got caught up in the moment? Like it was one of those you were just so in the moment of the performance because of the freedom, and then you realized, okay, was that what you wanted? Like, are you given that kind of freedom to really stretch your acting muscles in the studios into that level?
Yeah, they're very interested in what the artist is bringing, and that's been a great gift. And they're also really smart about what they're going to need to get us to the end. So
Yeah.
Yep.
we get very specific notes sometimes some more general notes, but it really feels like a collaboration.
Oh, absolutely.
It does,
Yeah.
because they're in their complete audio intake. And so they said, the next time, Bill, maybe when that happens, you went, ugh. I said, oh, of course, that makes perfect sense.
Right.
Yeah.
It's gotta be fun for them too, because they're also watching. Like as we're in there, because when you lose yourself as an actor, that's often the most organic. That's the great take. When you're not thinking about it anymore, you're out of your head. So in those moments where you're just playing, and then you're like, oh right, how'd that go? That's usually great.
Yeah.
The goal is to lose yourself into it.
Just to get a little more granular with everything you guys told us. So, like, you do have props, and the sound of those props are recorded. Because it's audio, do you have to, like, exaggerate your movements a little bit? Like, if you're looking through a book, do you have to, like, exaggerate the page movements?
Honestly, more like
Yes.
I
We have to
did.
bring it back.
Like I had a glass of ice, and we're
I was
walking
just
along, and I
about
was
to
like,
go there.
clink, 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 clink. And it's like, don't shake the glass. I can't hear what you're
The
saying.
mics are pretty sensitive.
Yeah,
They
it's
do their
real.
job.
So
Okay.
it's
Does the
actually.
job.
It's kind of
Yeah.
like if you're on camera for film, like less is more. You don't like when the shot's that tight, you don't have to go, it's just the thought gets picked up. So it's kind of the audio version of doing film, I would say.
It's
Yeah.
true. And there are some different muscles that come into play, because if you're this tight and you want to indicate you hear something behind you, and I found myself doing this on day one. Take it with the eyes like that.
Oh, wow.
And so Brendan says, yeah, that's not enough. Go ahead, Bill, and look this way and speak. And that mic, this three-dimensional mic is going to pick up
Beautiful.
that action. So it's a different set of muscles.
Acting tips for you. Inspired actors.
From a production standpoint, afterwards, if you guys have time, there will be a few minutes for each of you to go into one of our rooms next to production where they're like feeding in some audio, so you guys can like kind of get a feel for what's happening. So if you have more questions about production, so Chloe and Dan are here as well. They're the head producers on this, and so they can answer questions
Jenny.
afterwards. Sorry.
It's okay. Chloe is also a producer.
Yes.
Chloe Wilson.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you have more production
And
questions, feel free.
can I throw in the suggestion that you ask him to take the top off of the mic cover so you see the multiple mics inside?
I'd like to see that.
Oh, yes. Oh. They trotted the old guy through. See, this is what.
See here, sir.
You might not be allowed to share any of this, but do any of the characters that we said goodbye to in season 1 get a chance to come back for some kind of resolution or continuation of their stories? I don't know if that's going too far.
TBD.
Mum's the word.
Safe with you.
Mom,
Can't vote for
TBD,
Trump.
babes.
Wolverine.
He's in season 2?
He's in season
You might find it just-
As far as like real props, they did insert knives into his arms.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
He has
Oh,
them
really?
down.
Yeah, that's dedication.
Could, sorry, could each of you speak to the Lost Trail? What that means to your characters individually?
Well, without giving anything, I don't like to give anything. I'm sorry, I'm just not the teaser type of dude. But for me, the Lost Trail is a lot for me. My God. Oh my God.
It's a lot.
No, it's fine. They asked what's the Lost Trail mean to each of our characters, and I was trying to not say much, with saying much. He knows I talk a lot.
It's a good way out, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not going to say much because I don't know.
It's I'm going through this journey where I thought I would be alone, and I find this man, or he finds me, and we become this pair to look for the things that this man and a couple of others have taken from us. And that's what the Lost Trail for me is. I mean, it's nothing more than that I'm on this journey with a stranger that I don't know, but I'm sticking with him because I need to find what I have been missing for the last 2-3 months. And that's my Lost Trail.
Thank you so much.
Duty calls.
Sorry, everyone.
Easy way out.
All right,
For Marine, I guess being the woman going through this, the Lost Trail is about consequences. And how do we hold the mirror up to ourselves? What happens when the mirror is held up to ourselves? Accountability, and can you find your way back? Is there redemption? Is there redemption? Too heavy, guys?
No, it's great.
I was going to get more grandiose about it.
Okay.
No, in a very general sense, it sort of goes back to how so much of Marvel's canon is interested in identity. Who you are, how you exist in the world, how you walk through the world, how you choose to walk through the world versus who you believe you are versus how you wish you were walking through the world versus how the world lets you walk through it. So I feel like it gets down to the nitty-gritty in that sense.
Just rephrase the question again. Who asked it? What is the
The Lost Trail. What's it mean to Logan?
It's interesting actually because I think the Lost Trail is Maureen. Like he's lost her,
and he's on a mission to find her. And in a way, it's a sort of reversal of last season, because whereby last time Logan was the hunted, he's now kind of the hunter, the detective. But on another level, and it's something that only occurred to me after reading all 10 episodes and performing all 10 episodes, I feel like there's so many kind of layers of life that feel very current and relevant in it. And on a kind of metaphysical level, I feel like we've kind of lost our way as people, and it's sort of baked into the story that we're trying to really find ourselves, and in a way through Marcus and through his family's community, there is a kind of redemption at the end of the trail. I think that's what it's seeking.
Richard, do you mind enlightening us to Logan in this season? Because we talked about it here. In season 1, he was kind of like this shadowy, mythic figure. He maybe doesn't exist. In season 2, we're definitely following him more. Like, the spotlight is definitely on him more. Can you enlighten us into just how maybe different Wolverine is this time around, or
I mean, he's the same to me. I didn't realize how I sort of just dipped in and out of last season. I hadn't quite noticed that, because I was still on my mission but being pursued. But I guess he's different this time because it's sort of galvanized how much he needs Maureen to sort of find himself, because his memory has been wiped so many times, and he's existed over such a long period of time that I think the frustration of not knowing who he is makes him feel like a lost figure. So everyone that he comes in contact with, I mean, primarily starting with Marcus, it's a way of finding some kind of mirror to reflect himself back at. But really, everything about who he is contained in Maureen, and I think that becomes quite acute in this series.
How is it different for you as an actor now that Logan is more in the foreground of the season versus being kind of a shadowy figure?
It's doing a lot more work. I think you just understand much more about him. You get much more of his internal fight. You get much more of his humanity, or his animality. Yeah, I mean, and I think last season he felt much more like a beast. This season we see much more of the human side of him. There's less moments of transformation, and he uses it less. He uses it very sparingly, much more as a weapon rather than a kind of gut instinctive reaction to something. So I guess you could say he's sort of evolving. Yeah.
We just learned about how the show was recorded, which is really unique compared to like other even audio dramas. Just for you this season, since you're in it more, do you get to like even when you're just recording, do you do this a lot more, or like what is acting like Wolverine to you in season 2?
I have to be careful because, as I said to Brandon about a couple of days ago, when we were about to get into a fight with Willie, who does he play? Does he play Bo?
Willie is yes,
just lovely old chap, no, he plays
Couture.
No, Burl.
Burl.
There's a big bar fight at the beginning, and I was like, I don't think I can get physical because it's quite hard to kind of commit and then not commit. Like if you throw a punch, I could, when you've got yourself kind of fired up, it's hard to sort of do a pretend punch with all the energy of a real vocal commitment. So I was like looking at him thinking, I really don't want to take your head off. So I don't know. You find a kind of halfway house, but we're in a smaller room than we were last time, which is the first day I walked in, I felt like, oh no, there's no room to kind of thrash around. But actually, it's been really interesting because it's a little bit more claustrophobic, which is cool.
How would you compare the process to working in animation? Because you've also done voice work for Netflix's Castlevania, for example.
Yeah, that's a very different experience because they don't create the animation first. They use the voices first, and often you're not reading with another actor, so you're reading your lines in isolation. So you have to absolutely decide ahead of time how you're going to say it and what the attitude is. Whereas this feels like the first couple of weeks in a rehearsal room. That's why I'm convinced that we're making movies. It's just because we talk about where's the camera at this point and who are we focusing on, because my mind works like a movie director, actor. So I'm still convinced that this is going to be seen one day. So you sort of work in that way, and of course, because you have actors to work opposite, they become real scenes. And I go home at night and think about the boat that we were on today and the mosquitoes that were biting me, and I'm like, actually that didn't happen. That was just something that your head created. But it's vivid. You know what I mean? That's testament to the writing. It's really beautifully written.
Yes. Absolutely.
Well, Richard, could you illustrate your relationship to each of these characters as Logan? Like, who's Logan to your character? Who's Logan to Remy? Who's Logan to?
Well, Marcus is like a little thorn in my side. Who early on he's really trying to pick it out and just get rid of that thorn, but eventually it sort of starts to kind of itch a bit, and then comes a tickle, and then he kind of likes having it. So he just hangs on to the thorn. And there's a paternal thing going on. There's an antagonism, but it doesn't get too sentimental, which is good. And I think that they challenge each other, which is really quite surprising. With the age and culture gap, but I think that's one of the most fascinating parts of it. Obviously, Maureen is, I believe, I'm led to believe, is kind of a deep-rooted love interest for Logan. Somebody he believes he had a personal love connection with. He's on a mission to find out if that's true, if she still exists. I think she makes him human. Not an animal. When we go into certain flashbacks of their life as he starts to piece together these memories, it is a very romantic story. It's a Logan I don't recognise and haven't seen before. And this fella, we're kind of old comrades, really, aren't we? We're sort of there's history there. They know each other. Again, it's hard for Logan to know any of this because his mind keeps getting wiped. But so he's reliant. I mean, any old Joker could turn up and say, "Yeah, we're old friends. We've done all of this stuff." And he'd be like, "Okay, tell me about that." But yeah, I think in a way the human side of him is like a magnet to those people, because you kind of hang on to those things that trigger memories, and of course, his mind is wiped, but it's not totally clear. I think there's little signposts along the way, but yeah, we're kind of Remy and Logan are old adversaries, would you call them? Kind of comrades and adversaries. Yeah. There's a push-pull there. I think that's always interesting.
We know that this season deals more with the mutant world. How does Logan fare with all these more mutant characters versus where it was much more isolated in the last season?
I think he feels very protective. Every time the word mutant comes up in a pejorative way by someone that's attacking them or trying to rip them out of the universe, I get like a little kind of flinch. I feel very protective towards them. I don't think it's by accident that appears in this season. I think there's sort of social relevances that are going on in the world at the moment that you instantly feel like, I really want to protect these people who are desperately in need and kind of ostracized and rejected by society. So I feel that's what I bring to Logan. He is a mutant, so he's one of them, but he's also weaponized. So again, there's a love-hate relationship with his own community and with himself. So that creates like a really good kind of push-pull.
Can you? Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Can you? So in the first season, the term X-Men is never spoken. Were you given any sense of how these stories slot into either the comics chronology or even the movie universe, or are they kind of more adjacent stories that don't necessarily impact or draw from directly? Because there's no real clear sense of, okay, this is taking place in modern times because the technology is there, but it doesn't make any reference of Logan's involvement with the X-Men. So it's not necessarily post-X-Men or pre-X-Men. It seems like it almost exists in its own timeline. Were you given a sense of that? Could you all speak to that a little bit?
We mentioned Weapon X a lot.
Yes.
I think there's a little bit more investment in towards the later half of the series of how Weapon X has functioned in Logan's life and in his evolution. Yeah, maybe it's deliberate. It does stand alone.
I mean, the Lost
There's
Trail,
there's
to me,
some-
that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Is because I kind of went in, I guess, blind is a weird way to say it, but just listening to the first season and not trying to put it anywhere, not trying to cubbyhole it and label it and go, this is where it fits in the chronology, and that kind of opened me up.
It's interesting setting it in Louisiana as well, because it kind of takes it out of a very, very modern urban environment and puts it into something that feels older. I mean, we kind of visit Connor, what's her name?
Connor Eystone.
Who is sort of rooted in voodoo and magic, and
that traditional.
it sort of sits opposite
mysticism.
Weapon X and her kind of religion and the Weapon X religion. You're like, wow, these are sort of universes that are poles apart, but they're equally kind of observed, and I think it's nice. It feels antiquated in a way.
You mentioned earlier the sort of social relevance in this season to today's culture. Can you expand on that a little bit? Mutants have always been kind of an allegory for social ostracization, but is there like a specific sort of issue or thing that like this season talks about?
I suppose I could. I mean, you've got to stop me getting political, but there is. I think the mutant community and the sort of search for a safe haven and the way that they are tempted towards something which is malevolent by Jason Wingard. We've mentioned him. Are we allowed to?
Yes, absolutely.
Is a little allegory in itself, but I'm really fascinated with Jason Wingard, and I mean, I think he's one of the most incredible character creations. Just this idea of somebody that can manipulate the mind of somebody to believe something that isn't true in the absolute kind of physical here and now. To me, that's an allegory for propaganda. Let's just say, and it didn't occur to me until I was reveling in it, thinking, "Wow, what an amazing villain!" And then realizing, are we living in that time? I mean, that's why I want to see this. I want to hear this, but I also want to see this. I think it would make the most incredible. I mean, you could build a universe around that character. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because it's so recent, do you mind just like talking about like what Stanley maybe meant to you as not just actors but also just as fans or people, or just like what did Stanley leave upon you guys?
I commend that, man. Thank you, Stanley, again. Me and my brother, like Rachel, my brother, big X-Men fan, and I knew nothing about Stan Lee, and I only started knowing about Stan Lee when I got deeper into my Afro studies, and when I look at the story of Magneto versus Dr. Charles Xavier X, I definitely go back and I say this is exactly, Stan Lee was emulating the civil rights movement. He wants this story. He wants this. That's what he wanted this to be. It's MLK's theory versus Malcolm X's theory. It's the non-violent approach versus the by any means necessary approach. And he did that a lot with his stories. And he created a world called Wakanda. He gave, black actors empowerment, in that way. And he knew that it would lead to black women, black men, gay women, all these different minority groups to be employed and to have impact in this world. And that's why he means so much to me. And that's why this job, I'm getting emotional now, this job means so much to me, because I get to now be a part of a character that maybe Stanley didn't write, but it's his world, it's his universe, and I'm now a part of that some way, somehow. And thank you, Stanley. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, for me, it's my family hails from the Caribbean, from Jamaica, and my father just told me last year that his grandfather lived his entire life a slave. So I have proof that my great-grandfather lived most of his life as a slave. When you deal with a master storyteller, a professional dreamer, it kind of goes without saying. There's an African term, Sankofa. It means looking back to see where you're headed. And for me, comics have always been sacrosanct because it's an escape. And again, everyone belongs. And it's a kind of art that it kind of sneaks up on you because a lot of times a layperson wouldn't understand what goes into it. You know, they don't understand how much is crafted into like something that's hand drawn and colored and perfect. The specificity of it. You know, we're living in really hard times. That's cards face up. I don't need to pretend to say that. If anyone doesn't believe that, we need to have a reality check. So as we watch the great artists of our time pass, checking out and passing the baton, we have to see it as a relay. We don't have a choice. So as with a lot of visionaries, I thought about this when David Bowie passed. I mean, we never caught up to David Bowie. We never, I mean, these are artists that we still haven't caught up to. And their trail of work is the breadcrumbs, us trying to figure out what was going on in their heads. So it's nothing but respect and that kind of wonder of what can be, you know, it's that inspiration. I'm also an educator. So when I bring comics into the South Bronx, and when we're, you know, this is absolutely literature. Don't tell me these stories don't matter, right? It's pretty hard to even really give words to because it stands alone and it stands the test of time. I mean, I'll absolutely be handing comics to my kids.
I mean, it's a strange thing to celebrate a life as it's passing, but what a life! I mean, what an amazing long life! What a legacy! And also, just going what you were both talking about storytelling. I mean, he is the master storyteller, and the reason for that is because no character was ever irrelevant. No character was too small. Even kind of my small contribution to Captain America, the little backstory that was created for Heinz Kruger was so kind of detailed and beautiful and fleshed out. And I think he did that with every character, regardless of who they were, where they were from, what color their skin was, and I think that is eternal. I think that's why his characters will be constantly visited and revisited.
And the thing about mutants, it's because that's just straight Latin muto mutare, to change. That's all that means.
Yeah.
And as a human, I hope that I'm changing all the time. It scares me. That's why I'm so terrified when I see, you know, a leader who doesn't change, no matter what. I wear a ring on my finger. It says believe. I think that's the most dangerous word in any language. Believe, because it means no matter what's put in front of you, you've already made a decision that you won't be changed. So there's something beautiful in how mutant, that word itself, is shifted and used differently throughout the second season that I also appreciate just as a word nerd.